Rainworld is a 2D platformer where you play as a pathetic little rodent referred to as a slug cat. You're almost on the lowest tier of the food chain, and you're not built for combat. The only thing you have to help you is the fact that you have a brain that can help you navigate the world and maneuver around the countless threats of this world. Rainworld's gameplay consists of a simple loop as you journey towards somewhere. Wake up from hibernation, eat, explore, find the next shelter before rain comes, hibernate, and repeat. You don't really know where you're going, but you do know you're accompanied by a strange little yellow worm. This yellow worm is introduced to you in the tutorial as some sort of guide. We'll put a pin in the word tutorial for now. It shows you where food is, tells you how to leap the gap, and points towards the shelter to end the tutorial. In general, it seems like a basic guide. As you explore, it might start pointing you towards a specific direction using an icon of the slug cat. There isn't really any push besides the guide to have you explore regions, so unless you're very self-driven to explore the world, you'll likely see what the guide has in store for you. Now, all in all, for a game that brands itself as being extremely focused on challenging gameplay, platforming, survival, and exploration, that's all you really need to get started in the game. It's not common for games to throw you into a hostile world with no real guidance, but this is what the game wants to be, and it's quite clear about that. So why did I, the first time I played it, quit playing within an hour? Why do so many other players struggle to actually get into the game? What pushed me to actually go back to the game and play it fully? I first have to emphasize that I went into the game the first time around entirely blind. I hadn't even seen the trailer. I only saw a few screenshots when my boyfriend gifted me the game, and otherwise I entered as blind as possible, as that is what everyone said you should do. In a way, I do get that, and frankly I would have enjoyed it. I was able to look past the clunky menus, if it wasn't for the tutorial. Rainworld's tutorial is one of the worst tutorials I've seen in a video game. Which is impressive, seeing as it does teach you the basic tools you need for the game to get started perfectly fine. The rest are intended to be discovered on your own. But the issue with the tutorial is that yellow worm friend we have. So, the main thing in Rainworld is that the player is meant to be as clueless as the slug cat, and the game also pushes heavily the diegetic stance of this is the information the player gets, and this is the information the slug cat gets. But this stance is instantly broken at the very start of the game. When the game wants to inform you of controls or game information, it will give you a cinematic blank barring at the top and bottom, and some text. It might also have a visual image shown on screen that is very clearly not actually within the game world. This is a clear indicator that this is information for the player, not the slug cat in universe. The player is learning that certain buttons make the slug cat do certain things, and the player learns the basic objectives. But then, in the midst of the tutorial, our yellow friend is starting to also lead us places. At first, it uses symbols that can be read as in-world guidance to the slug cat and the player, compared to the earlier tutorial information that was clearly towards just the player. But then, when you follow it, you experience a breach in the standards the game had set. Here's a tutorial teaching you how to catch and eat batflies. But when you grab a batfly, suddenly the guide starts also giving information directly to the player, and not to the slug cat. Beside the fact that this information is more confusing rather than useful, as having a visual ring show up is a lot more weird than just saying to hold X for a couple seconds, it also now teaches the player that the guide is not an in-world thing for the slug cat, but a thing for the player, because it is teaching you information that the slug cat would obviously not know or understand and does not exist in universe. Why is it showing me controller buttons if the game could have just done the same thing it did at the very start? Because of this, the game now has a guide that the player will misunderstand and get frustrated by, as it has shown that it can be clear and obvious about what you must do, but immediately after will only give you vague directions and entirely unclear symbols for you to decipher. The easiest solution for this is to have the guide not give you out-of-world information at all. There is no reason for it to do so. Because now, instead of thinking, okay, this is an in-world thing that is meant to be confusing, the player will think that the guide is a bad guide, because it's confusing for no reason. And this tutorial, combined with the difficulty of the game, is what made me not want to play. I got confused and was given the runaround by a supposed guide that was teaching me the game, where I was given no separation between the guide being a tutorial and being an actual element of the game world. So how would I improve Rainworld's tutorial? I would just remove the guide from the tutorial area. There's no reason it has to be there immediately. They can have it show up after your first hibernation, where it will do what it does, give vague directions towards points of interest, such as food, shelters, etc. Everything in the tutorial can be explained using the game-to-player method of communication. This will remove the jarring experience of the guide ceasing to be a clear method of communicating gameplay to the player, while maintaining the curiosity and lack of information that the game wants you to discover yourself. Now, there's more than the tutorial that makes me struggle to recommend the game. So, let's move on to... Rainworld is a game that can be described as clunky and finicky. Now, when it comes to the Slugcat's controls, this is an issue that remedies with practice and gameplay, so that's not really what I'm going to cover. Now, I'm talking about Rainworld's god-awful menus and controller issues. See, when you launch Rainworld first, and then plug in your controller, the game will not recognize your controller as a valid input. You have to restart the game to make this work. Fine, it's annoying, but I can live with it. However, then you're introduced to the mystery of going through the menus with a controller, and with that I say just use your mouse. Moving through the menus with a controller is as challenging as the actual gameplay at times, and I cannot comprehend why it is like that. On top of that, the menu layout is unclear and all over the place. When you open Rainworld, this is what you see. Every player is going to go into the options screen first, and will likely go into story second. When you go into the options screen, you find things are very limited, but you've got your basics. Now, the main thing Rainworld is lacking here is accessibility settings. Many players will just look at this and go, oh, the game has no accessibility options, when that is entirely untrue. See, in order to get to the accessibility settings, which should really be categorized under options, they are instead in the remix menu, which is the mod menu. Not only that, but you have to specifically go into the remix menu and manually activate the Rainworld Remix mod first before you can configure accessibility settings. And only then can you navigate to the mod's Assist tab to add some accessibility options. My biggest question is, why are the accessibility settings so hard to find? Why can't there be a button in the settings that brings you to a screen where you can find these exact settings? Why is there no information in the options to at least direct a new player to where they can find these settings? Things like reducing screen shake, reducing loudness, better depth bit indicators, and more are hidden behind so many menus. But not only that, things that would be considered an accessibility setting are split between the Assists and General tab. Why aren't settings to make the game more accessible on a single tab instead of being hidden around several menus? A new player would have no idea how to find these settings without being told by another player. And seeing as this game is touted around as a game you must enter blindly, it's very unlikely someone willing to go in fully blind is going to be told anything. These two things are the biggest drivers towards getting first-time blind players from wanting to put in the work to get past the hurdle of the start of the game into the fun stuff. Because if you already had to fight the menus and then got actively misled and confused by the tutorial itself, then the effort already put in just to try and play it is just not worth the effort. Now that that's out of the way, I can finally get to... Like I mentioned earlier, the first time I tried the game, I got frustrated by the misleading guide. Though admittedly, I have to also say that the game itself isn't good at giving the player a push forward to go out and explore. It happily tells you that in text, yes, but honestly I believe that it would have had so much more reason to go beyond the starting area if the game took safety away from you once you finished the tutorial. You get your first hibernation, the shelter breaks in a quick cutscene, and you're forced to go further beyond to actually find and explore the world and make you engage with the environment. Otherwise, you generally get the usual issue of players sticking to the safety of what they know, seeing as they can just fill up on food and go back to the safe nook they were given at the very start. So, my first experience was get killed by lizards a couple times, managed to make it past one, go somewhere the guide was leading me to, and then proceed to get guided back to where I came from again, because I was under the false belief that the guide is the game itself telling me to go somewhere rather than a suggestion, as I thought it was a part of the tutorial still. And then I eventually quit because I got frustrated at the guide. So why did I come back to a game I just did not enjoy? One big part of it was that Downpour released, and it piqued my interest. YouTube recommended a single video to me. It was some random group of 4 people playing the now official co-op mode, utilizing the new slug cats. In particular, Artificer grasped my attention with their double jump ability. I watched some gameplay, and then I watched some more, and undoubtedly got entirely spoiled on a lot of parts of the game, but it was the thing I needed to make me want to try again. I purchased Downpour, and the first thing I did was try out co-op with my partners. We sucked at it, but even with that little collective struggle, it made me want to get better so that I could guide my friends, who were worse at the game, through a clearly challenging environment. I found it fun to be the guide, and for that I actually had to know the game. So while I maintained our survivor save, I went on to do my first run as monk. And with the main intention being get better at the game, and go see the areas that I saw in the video myself, I had a lot more motivation. In this case, the game being spoiled to me was what made me want to play it myself and experience the rest of it myself. And within several hours I was just fully hooked. I mean entirely hooked. The second I started playing the game, I sunk nearly 40 hours within 2 weeks. All I was doing in my days was applying for jobs, and then spending the rest of my day playing Rainworld, only pausing to make sure my body actually got food, and occasionally going to the bathroom. I was utterly engrossed in the entire game. I read the wiki obsessively when not playing, spoiling me on even more things but absolutely fascinating my hyper-fixated brain and making me want to play. I learned about all the lore, getting more and more attached to this expansive world and its hidden story. I'd get frustrated in the game, put it down, and an hour later I'd be back to try again. Again and again. Until I beat the game. And then I beat Artificer. And then I beat Hunter. And so on. All the videos I'd watch would be various people's Rainworld playthroughs. In particular, the co-op ones that brought a series of great shenanigans. I actually read through the 20-page movement document to somewhat get the idea of certain movement tricks in my mind that I could try out in-game. And only after I'd beaten the game multiple times did I actually look at its trailer, and realize, oh, if I had gone against the go in blind suggestion that everyone gave me, I likely would have watched the trailer and looked up some things about it and actually enjoyed it a lot more the first time around. My obsession with it caused several of my friends to try and go through the initial struggle and push past it, even though they suffered through the same frustration I did when I first picked it up. In fact, I ended up just giving them the information I would have needed when I started. That mainly being, the yellow guide is not a guide or a tutorial, it's a creature that suggests. You can follow its suggestion, but you can also explore for yourself. If you like challenging games with beautiful art, incredible AI, incredible lore, and just a generally captivating atmosphere, Rainworld is the ideal game for you. But, for those on the fence, I recommend watching a video or two at least. If you want to be given some of the lore that gives just enough information about the lore to make you fascinated, but gives a spoiler warning at the point where your own gameplay would start, I can highly recommend the video The Affairs of Passing Gods by Solemn Sunday. It will give you just enough food to get your brain going and want to play the game to discover things on your own. And also, it is just an incredible video in general. I watched it several times. I've made several people watch it with me. This is the end of the video. I ran out of script, so thank you for listening to my rambling, and I hope y'all have a nice day. Bye!